Hi, my name is Tim. I'm the Everyday Apologist, working with Ratio Christi. Here I have Nick Peters with me, and he's the co-author of Defining Inerrancy, Affirming a Defensible Faith for a New Generation. Nick, welcome to the show.
Good to be here. Honored to be invited on.
Nick does some work with a blog called Deeper Waters and a podcast, so I encourage you guys to check out Deeper Waters and his podcast. Nick, how often does that usually come out?
Normally, I do one podcast every Saturday, and it's a 2-hour interview. And for my blogs, I try to do Monday through Friday. Sunday is my day of rest.
Fantastic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link below in the description to his blog and to his podcast so that you guys can check more information out about what Nick does in his book. Nick, what I wanted to talk with you today about is the cultural context and how we read Scripture. So if I'm reading Scripture and I read a passage and I take just the plain simple reading of it and I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me. What's wrong with that?
The trouble is, as Werner Mischke says in his book, The Global Gospel, culturally speaking, the Bible does not belong to you. It's not your book. Reading the Bible is a cross-cultural experience. We often think, well, the text should be plain to us modern Westerners in the 21st century, but that's just part of our individualistic narcissism that we have going on, that we think it's all about us. I mean, for instance, I tell people when you're reading the Old Testament, I want you to stop being a Christian for a little while. In the sense of read it like a Jew at the time would have heard it without thinking about Christ. Find out what it meant then, and then you can put on your Christian hat and see what it tells you about Christ. And if you want to understand the culture, you can talk to missionaries who have gone over there, or you can read the works of leading scholars in the field who study the honor shame.
So what we need to do is we need to take a step out and continue to renew our mind and use our mind and read some scholarly work. So the Bible is going to give us some outlines of what we need to do, but we need to understand those in the cultural context. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes, and many of these books you'll find they can be written on a popular level just as well, so I'm not going to ask you to pore over these boring 1,000-page long manuscripts. I would recommend you read something that's simple and easy for you to understand. The Global Gospel by Werner Mischke, or Misreading Scripture with Western Eyes by Richards and O'Brien. Both of those would be excellent.
Fantastic. So, Nick, can you just give us an example of maybe how some people are misreading a text? I know that you have mentioned in the past Romans 7. So if you could just maybe give us a quick outline of maybe how somebody would read it without the proper context and then try to put it in the proper context for us.
Oh, sure. When we read Romans 7, we often read it from our own cultural perspective. And we hear Paul saying, the good that I want to do, I don't do this. But the evil that I don't want to do, this I keep on doing. Now, many of us can relate to that. That is what we do many times. And we think, there's Paul. He's talking about the Christian life. No, he's not. Because in the world that Paul lived in, you did not really have introspective consciences like that. Instead, what Paul is talking about here, I think, is Adam. Adam is the last person he mentions in Romans 5, and he's making a long rhetorical argument. He's still using Adam as his source. And he's talking about the sin of coveting, actually.
Okay.
Which is interesting because the rabbis said the sin that Adam and Eve committed in the garden was coveting. And if someone wants more on this, Ben Witherington has a great book called What's in the Word, and he goes into great depths on this argument. It's just one example.
Fantastic, Nick. That is awesome. I think that's something that we can take and apply to our scripture reading. and continue to grow in our contextual understanding of Scripture and when the Bible was written. You had mentioned to me before in a conversation that we had that we tend to read the Bible as a Westerner, and perhaps it was more written in an Eastern vein. So what's a quick difference between the two that we can kind of be aware of going forward?
There's no perhaps, it's a definite. But the main differences that we see is in the West, we're what's called a guilt-innocence society, where we are very internally focused. And in the East, you live in what is known as an honor-shame society, where it's all about how you're perceived in the public. Are you perceived as honorable, or are you perceived as shameful? In fact, I did a search earlier today for an article that I'm writing on this. And I searched the ESV on Bible Gateway. The word guilt shows up 18 times in the New Testament. It does not refer to an internal feeling. It refers to a legal reality. In fact, it doesn't even show up once in Romans. And in the Pauline epistles, it only shows up a few times in 1 Corinthians. Meanwhile, shame shows up to 30 times, or rather 30 times, in the text. Innocent shows up 10 times, and that's seen in a legal status again. Honor shows up 69 times. You think maybe we've got our focus wrong here?
Yes, I do. Well, Nick, thank you so much for your insight, brother. Looking forward to that article coming out where we can get a little bit more information. Again, I'm going to link to how you can contact Nick and get to his blog and get to his podcast. And Nick, thanks so much. This has been the Everyday Apologist. We hope that you can apply these principles that you've learned in this video to living a life every day for Jesus and being that apologist evangelist that we are called to be. Thank you so much.
Thank you.